Hi, I am here to talk to you about hypnobirthing. So basically, the ultimate goal with hypnobirthing is to birth as naturally and instinctively as possible. Now, in order to do that, we need to minimize our pain, which is why I call this little workshop Birthing with Minimal Pain. I'm going to share with you my 5 secrets to having an amazing birth, and we'll also talk a little bit about me. Now, in this presentation, I normally show a birth video, but our parents give us these videos to share in classes in small groups, and they do not want them published on the internet. So for the sake of today's video, which will be shared on the internet, I won't be sharing a birth video, but if you're watching this with me, I will link through on my website, then I'll link through to some birth videos where you can see some hypnobirthing videos that have permission to be shared on YouTube. So my 5 secrets to an amazing birth. So just before we get started on this, I want to tell you a little bit about me. My name is Denise. I'm the owner of Mama Vibe, and transitioning that to just my name. I am a hypnobirthing mama. So I did hypnobirthing when I gave birth to my eldest over 7 years ago now. And I mean, I found it really helpful. I had an amazing birth experience. It was really incredibly positive. I felt empowered, in control. It was beautiful. It was everything that I thought birth could be, which is why I sought out independent birth education. When I started to get into Mum's Group, and I have a beautiful group of ladies that I'm still friends with today, and I started to realize as we started to talk birth stories that my story was not the normal birth story. And in fact, I was hearing stories of trauma, of things that didn't go to plan, of unnecessary interventions that Mama felt was unnecessary. I'm not making judgments on anybody's birth by any means. And all of a sudden I realized that what I had learned and what I knew was not the norm. And I really wanted to get out there and share that with other women. So I took the plunge. It took me a little while to become a birth educator. And specifically, I chose HypnoBirthing, the Mongan Method. I was taught a different method of hypnobirthing, which I found not to be as comprehensive as the original hypnobirthing program created by Marie Mongan. And I specifically chose this one because I find it to be super comprehensive. I love the 5-week layout, which allows parents to come back and reinforce their learnings and really make the most out of the program. So that's the particular type of hypnobirthing that I choose to teach. And I took that with me as an educator this time around into my second birth, which was very different to my first birth. It was incredibly fast, incredibly intense. And, you know, without the techniques that I had, I definitely could have been overwhelmed and things could have gone very differently. But instead, I had an incredible water birth again with my second. Like I said, it was very fast. He was born into the water, and I said, and I asked my husband if he remembered this the other day, but as he was born, I said, I'm not doing that again. Anyway, here I am, baby number 3, safely inside my belly. And it looks like that I'm going to be doing this again. And I'm so grateful that I can do this with what I know from hypnobirthing and what I'm continuously learning about birth and postpartum. So that's who I am, and that's what I share with women. I don't have a natural birth agenda. While I think a lot of people that do hypnobirthing do go on to have births without any chemical analgesia, that's not my goal. My goal is to have parents that feel totally empowered and go on to have birth experiences that leave them feeling in control, amazing, very happy with their births. And, you know, if you come back to me as one of my students and you tell me that you asked for an epidural, I'll be like, that's awesome. If you tell me that you needed a C-section for whatever reason, I'll be like, great, how did that go? What was your experience like in the postpartum? I'm definitely not a one-trick pony, and I'm not the educator for somebody that needs somebody to hold their hands and to be, you have to take this path. I'm the educator for families that know that there's a better way to birth and are looking for somebody that can show them how they can take control of their own journey. So these are my 5 secrets to an amazing birth. These will help minimize your pain, and overall you'll find birth to have that amazing and empowering experience. And that's both for mama and dad. So the first thing that you need to learn is why childbirth became painful, why we know inherently that childbirth is the most agonizing thing that any person will ever go through. So crazy that after somebody does it, they never have a baby again. Oh, wait a second. So basically the first thing we need to know is we need to look at our external programming, our cultural conditioning on what birth is, why it's painful, and how things changed over the centuries, how sometimes our medical systems and environments contribute to this idea that birth must be extremely painful. As we start to look at this, we can take that opportunity to start to change the things that increase pain and move them back to things that actually decrease pain in labour. And once we can kind of do this as a goal, and we've let go of the idea that birth has to be inherently painful, then we can start to look at the actual mechanisms of birth, which comes to my second secret. So we need to learn about our bodies. I don't know about you guys, but birth was taught to me in, I'm pretty sure it's year 9 biology. And basically it's like sperm, egg, baby, birth, woman screaming, baby coming out of her vagina. Ah, don't do it. Don't have sex, girls. And ultimately, that's what we're left out there in the world, scientifically speaking, from our educations as birth. And, some schools won't even be as progressive as to have shown a vaginal birth to their students. So I guess I was lucky. But actually understanding what's happening in our babies, because we don't go into birth the second we have our first surge. In actual fact, we're preparing from birth even before we've had our baby. So each month with the expulsion of blood for our periods, that's a practice. For the second we actually conceive and the fertilized egg burrows into our uterine walls, our bodies start to prepare for birth. It's a beautiful hormonal cocktail that really, it requires the whole 9-month process. So learning exactly how our bodies work, how they function, and understand the gifts that our bodies give us to make birth more comfortable will really make birth a happier and more comfortable experience for you. So the third thing is sorry guys, but we overthink things. So we've got to get out of our heads. This is the fear, tension, pain cycle has been around for quite a while. So basically when we're afraid of something, we create tension in our body. That tension in our body will eventually create pain. When we feel pain, we'll move back into that cycle of being afraid. We'll create more tension, we'll create more pain. Now this is, you quite often find this in sports psychology, but it's actually in a lot of medical fields, and it very much applies to birth. So as long as we're afraid of birth, we're going to tense our muscles, we're going to hold stress in our bodies, and we're not going to allow our bodies to function in the way they're perfectly meant to function for birth. So we need to get out of our head. We need to take fear out of that cycle. But it's not actually so easy. And that really is where the hypnosis part of HypnoBirthing comes in. So we have a whole bunch of relaxation techniques that we not only teach you, but we get you to practice, and we reinforce week on week in the Mongan Method program. So you need these relaxation techniques to help your brain practice relaxing so that you can relax down into labour. And yes, I 100% guarantee that you can relax in labour. One of the things we're often not told is a surge lasts for a minute, and until you're in the birthing phase, you're going to get 2, 10, 20-minute breaks in between each surge, which means that you've got heaps of time to relax your body, to calm down and prepare for the next surge. And if we can get out of our heads, if we can remove that fearful place, then we will birth with minimal pain, because our body has natural pain relievers that will be boosted, that will be able to move freely throughout your body and to build up with your labour so that you can birth easily and with the least amount of pain possible. So practice and repetition. This is our fourth secret. So as we learn how to relax and help our bodies work with what our baby is doing, it's important to do just that. You know, there's nothing that we really learn in life without practicing it and repeating it over and over again, whether that be our ABCs, although now it's phonetics. But even so, my son needed to do phonetics over and over again and sight words before he could really have those sight words mastered. And, you know, when we go and do something as an adult, like driving a car, we don't just do our learner's test, we've done the written test and we're ready to go. No, we have to get behind the wheel, and we have to do that with an experienced driver, and we have to practice. We have to have big yellow signs on our car that say learners, and we have to do it over and over and over again until it becomes so habitual in our minds that we can do it without thinking. And this is the kind of competency that we want you to achieve in relaxation through birth, to allow you to birth as easily as possible. And really that just comes with practice. And the best part about a 5-week program is that you get time to practice and come back to your practitioner and talk to them, or educator, and talk to them about birth, what you've learned, what's working for you, what's not working for you. And also you have time to, I guess, reinforce those practice concepts, as opposed to doing, say, a program that is very short and sharp but doesn't give you that accountability with somebody where you come back every week and you have to say, yes, I practiced, no, I didn't. And the last thing is support. So if, for example, if you wanted to run a marathon, nobody just woke up one morning and was like, oh, I'm going to run the Gold Coast Marathon, and boom, it was done. That's not the way it works. You train your mind and you train your body. The community, the people that you surround yourselves with will support you in that. I know when I decided I wanted to do the Bridge to Brisbane as a non-runner, I had my personal trainer, and I had spoken to her about what I wanted and how I wanted to do it. And she helped, while she mostly worked to my strength, while I worked on the cardio and running outside of that. She helped me create a program. She worked with me for the program. She kept me accountable as to whether or not I did my homework when I wasn't with her. My husband, who is a runner, knew that it was my goal, and he supported me by finding time to allow for me to run, by running with me, although realistically, guys, he was not my favourite coach, because he would literally run circles around me and I'd want to punch him in the face. But, you know, he wanted to be there. He was excited to have the idea that I would be running with him, that we would share a hobby. So you really need to choose the same kind of support, the same kind of people that you would want around you that would support you, whether you chose to run a marathon or have a baby. Now, our support team, sometimes you might just be thinking, this is my birth partner, or, you know, it might be expanding out your birth partners to outside of just your life partner. And you might be looking at a parent or a sibling or a best friend as well. You might have, but then I want you to look further at that entire team. So it really starts with who you choose as your care provider. It's choosing somebody you know you can trust, that you're comfortable with, and that will help you make decisions that you are comfortable with, as opposed to lead you into decisions that you may feel like you have no choice in. And then, you know, if this is not your first baby, even the babysitter that you choose for your older sibling is really important, your older child or children, because if you're not comfortable walking around the house and labouring in front of them, they're not a good choice for your team. So you need to have somebody that you're comfortable with in case you need them there, but you're still going to stay at home for another few hours, so that they can care for the children to let you labour comfortably at home. but they have to make you feel comfortable in that. It could be a doula, so a birth support person that is just for you, so a non-medical person that really knows about birth and, you know, has some pain relief techniques up their sleeves. They can help you physically and emotionally during labour. And then once you've got all of those, even a birth photographer, if you choose to have somebody come in and photograph your birth, literally anybody that might be there for your birth is part of your birth support team. And the most important people at your birth are the birth partners that you choose. So like I said, it can be a life partner, and usually that is who it is. You know, it's been my husband for both my births. But also, you know, it could be a parent. In my last birth, I wanted to have my then 5-year-old there. He's now 7. But to do that, I needed his babysitter to be there as well, and I needed to be comfortable with that person. So I chosen my mum. So my birth support team, even in the birth partner spectrum, it became a 5-year-old child and my mum as well as my husband. It didn't work out that they came, and I think because of COVID it won't happen this time either. But, you know, I had to think about who would I be comfortable with being there, how will they support them. I had to have big discussions with my mum and my son about what will happen during birth, what happens if I don't want him there anymore, how he'll just have to leave if that's the case, how if he wants to leave, how he needs to be comfortable to say, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to go home, and how he would be supported by my mum to be taken home. So all of that kind of stuff really needed to be considered. But the birth support person or partner is really the last port of call between you and the care provider on the day. So they become your biggest advocate. So they need to know your birth plan. They need to want to be part of your birth. They have to believe in your birth plan. They have to believe in you. They have to know how to support you. They have to be able to advocate for the choices that you've made. And they have to do that all confidently and quietly, and kind of in a way that helps you feel secure so you can labour while they do all of the admin of birth, I guess. So then let's talk about birth partners and everything a birth partner needs to take into birth. So the first thing a birth partner needs to do is understand birth. So once again, I talked about our Year 9 biology version of birth. And considering that the majority of birth partners now are men or male partners, then realistically, there's a lot of the time they have literally no idea what's going to happen. And I'm not just talking about physiology of birth with what's going on with the uterus and things, but in terms of if I was to talk about early labour, active labour, birth, and after birth, which are stages of birth as set out via the hospital system, you know, would they know what we were talking about? If I use the term transition, would they be ready to step up and help you through that, probably one of the most difficult parts of labour? Or would they just be a little bit confused, really concerned for you, and just wanting to give you, if you know, analgesic pain relief, if that's what you're asking for at that time, even though it wasn't part of your birth plan? So they really need to move into a space where they have a lot of knowledge about birth so that they can be the advocate for you, so that they're not blindsided by each stage of birth and trying to catch up, as opposed to just being like, oh, okay, we're at this stage now, this is really good, baby's coming soon, how can I help you move through that? So, which is the next thing. They need to have strategies and suggestions ready. So no two births are the same. So the birth partner is really our what if type of person. So you focus on your ideal birth and they focus on the what if this happens. So they're ready for you if labour stalls. They're ready for you if you ask for analgesic pain relief. They're ready, you know, if watching you if you're not having a drink of water, for example. They're ready to give you a massage or you know, hip squeezes or something to help you comfortably through labour. And they can do that confidently because they've learnt about it. And the other thing is that they need some practical birth tools. So I know my husband is a little bit older and his dad was a little bit older again. So his dad never attended a birth, which means that by the time that he's going into this whole labour and delivery thing, my husband doesn't have that kind of male role model to help him in birth. They haven't been around for that long. And in terms of the history of birth, it's traditionally women that have supported women throughout history. Now, I'm not saying dads don't belong there. I think my husband was a wonderful support. But what I am saying is that we can't keep this secret women's business if we want our partners to be there in birth, and our male partners specifically. So we have to give them birth tools. You know, they have to learn about counter pressure. They have to learn about labour positions. And they have to be comfortable with knowing what's going to happen, when, and how to help you through that. So that will change them from just being a birth support person to a partner, so that you feel like that you're in this together, that you really have somebody by your side for the duration of your labour. And that's one of the things I love about HypnoBirthing, is that we really give dads that support. So we get lots of birth stories. It's my favourite thing about this job. So this is a recent one from one of my mamas who had an induction based on her due date. So she says that everyone says labour is like running a marathon, but my labour felt more like a 25k sprint. After the 40-week mark, we started to actively try to get Bub into the optimal position. We tried every method available to us, from raspberry leaf tea, rebozo, spinning babies, chiro, stretch and sweep, and acupuncture. At 41 weeks, Bub positioning was low and my cervix was soft and about 2 to 3 centimetres dilated. But we booked in for an induction at 41 plus 5, just in case, while still hoping Bub would come naturally before then. Anyway, 41 plus 5 came and things went progressing, so induction it is. They broke my waters in the morning and we managed to persuade the OB to give us 4 to 5 hours wait until the surges started naturally. At 2 p.m, still no surges, so we started the drip. Around 3 p.m, I started to get strong surges, but they were still 10 to 15 minutes apart. The next thing I know, the surges came one after another, about 15 to 30 seconds apart for a solid 60 seconds or so. This is when the pain pod really helped to distract me from the intense surges. The pain pod is the TENS machine that I hire out to clients. I remembered using the rhythm from the pain pod to breathe in and out because the surges were just too close together, which made it hard for me to rest and to catch a breath. Not long after that, I started to feel the urge to push. I was in active labour for 1 hour and pushed for 30 minutes before little Hugo finally came out and rested on my chest. I think it's the combination of HypnoBirthing, the pain pod, and the very short labour that helped me to get the drug-free labour that we always wanted. So that was a birth story from one of my mums that just birthed very recently. And there's so much good stuff in this birth story. So like I said, while a lot of people come to HypnoBirthing to have a natural birth, there are reasons why there might be interventions or extra help along the way. So this wonderful mum, she had an induction and she had tools for the induction right from the start. So she was able to make great decisions based on you know, the information that she had and being able to ask questions and all of that kind of thing. So she you know, had a discussion with the OB about, okay, well, if you want to break my waters, how long can I go to see if labour will start on its own? So they were given a certain amount of time. They rested, and I'm sure they used techniques to help them get started. And then eventually they consented to the drip, and that's so important. Informed consent makes a huge difference to the way you feel about your birth afterwards. And then she used other tools available to her. So when we have a induction with a drip, so Pitocin or Syntocinon, which is synthetic oxytocin, your contractions are generally a lot, your surges are a lot more intense than they would be for a natural onset to labour. And so she used the tools that she had. So she used the pain pod that she had, the TENS machine, to help her get into a rhythm, to help her relax down into it. And she had this amazing and incredible birth experience. And I love this birth story, just from the point of view that I see so much empowerment weaved into the birth story. And that's kind of what I want to achieve for all of my clients. So here's something from a dad. During my partner's pregnancy, I watched her grow more confident with the concept of giving birth. Her confidence in her own body's ability, and most importantly, her mental focus and general well-being. The HypnoBirthing classes I attended were well structured for a first-time dad and provided me with information to feel confident of the HypnoBirthing terminology, my role towards the midwives, and using a variety of calming techniques for my partner during labour. On the day of our son's birth, my partner was very calm and confident throughout the labour. And that was through one of our dads. It's always harder to get the dads to send us something, but I love it when they do because they really do feel like they were part of the birth, and I think that's so important. So I've mentioned a few times I teach the Mongan Method. So the Mongan Method was created by Marie Mongan in the 1990s, and it's the original HypnoBirthing program. So it's one of the most comprehensive independent birth classes out there. It's structured over 5 weeks, as I said, and we do that to help you practice the techniques, to give you that accountability for the practice, to repeat and build on them so that you get the retention of the techniques. And also, you know, one of my favourite things about it is that you build a really nice relationship with me most of the time. I haven't had a client not build a nice relationship with me yet. And that means that I'm there for you. So with the births that we just read about, I was in touch with them right up until the week before birth. If you wanted to talk to me about, say, booking an induction at some point, and how you felt about that, I'm open. I'm here for you for that. It's not a program, and I'm not a practitioner that teaches you these techniques and then expects you just to go off and do them by yourself. I'm here for you. I support you in all of that kind of thing. We have educators all over the world, which is one of my favourite things about the Mongan Method. It means that the evidence-based pieces of the program, evidence changes all the time. That's kind of the wonderful thing about science and about birth and pregnancy and breastfeeding and postpartum, is there's a lot going on at the moment, even since the 1990s. It's kind of an accelerated learning about what's happening within this process because it was left as a mystery for a very long time. And that means that, you know, if something comes out pretty revolutionary from, say, Ireland, for example, we don't ignore that information because it's not relevant to Australia. We look at the information as a whole all over the world, and, you know, we see how it is relevant to countries that maybe don't birth in the same way as another country, and how it's relevant to parents wherever they are in the world. And that's probably one of my, I love that. I keep saying it's one of my favourite things about the program. There's a lot I like about the program, but is that we can keep up to date with what's going on in the world, and that we're supported by people all over the world. So when I'm lucky enough to work with a couple that either mum or dad or both aren't from Australia, I can find out some cultural practices from birth from other parts of the world and weave that into the program for them, which is wonderful. So what to expect? So with our HypnoBirthing families, 77% of all vaginal births do not require epidural analgesia, and that's amazing because this program was created in America and it's mostly taken by Americans. And the uptake of epidural in America is ridiculously high. It's the standard for birth. 45% laboured for less than 8 hours. How cool is that? Nice short labours. The national average here in Australia when we talk about C-sections is about 32%. Now in some hospitals here in Brisbane, that rate is well over 70%. But only about 17% of hypnobirthing mamas require a caesarean birth. And, you know, that's great because it's very much in line with what the World Health Organization deems to be necessary rates of surgical birth. And that means that, you know, parents are making decisions that are informed, that are the best for them. Then postpartum, we actually have higher rates of breastfeeding at 6 weeks postpartum, which is huge because breastfeeding, I always say I'm a postpartum doula as well, and it's like the easiest, hardest thing you'll ever do. Once you've got breastfeeding down pat, it is so convenient, it is so easy, it is just fantastic. But it usually takes 6 to 12 weeks to establish breastfeeding. And if you don't know what to expect, it's easier to give up. So creating that kind of empowering birth experience, we do postpartum, a small amount of postpartum education within the HypnoBirthing program, and getting you ready for that means that you're more likely to succeed at breastfeeding if that's a goal for you. We also have less incidences of self-reported postpartum depression in our mums. So that's a wonderful thing to have. And I think that mostly comes from the fact that when birth is empowering, doesn't matter the circumstances of what happens in birth, if there are special circumstances, but if you feel that you're able to be in control, to make informed decisions were respected, that you are less likely to experience psychological side effects after your birth. So, we rushed through one there. Let's talk about how much. So, prams, cots, all of that kind of stuff. I'm sitting in my youngest nursery at the moment, and this beautiful mural up here on the wall was created by my husband. But even having that mural printed cost us $200. Totally worth it, by the way. It's fabulous, and I love that it was handmade. For my eldest, his cot was $1,200, and I hated it. And I'm sorry if Mum ever watches this, because she bought it for us. That was a wonderful gift to have been given, but it just was not the cot for me. And I took advice from Mum, from friends and everybody, and they said, you know, you want a drop side cot, all of this kind of stuff. And I got that, and I ended up just with bruises on my legs from the drop side cot. I didn't like it. And then I went to visit my mother-in-law in the UK, and we borrowed my sister-in-law's cot, which was just the cheapie from IKEA, and that's what I'm touching now over here, which I bought second time around for $50. Prams. Oh, and by the way, my second is still in this cot. He was in it for his 2 years. My eldest, he was in his cot for about 6 months, and then he slept with us until he was 2, and then he was in a bed. So you don't, just because you buy a cot doesn't mean you'll use it. Prams are one of those things. I don't know. Is there such a thing as a cheap pram? Holy moly. First time around, we were gifted a pram from my sister-in-law here in Australia, and very grateful for that. It was a good little pram, but we used to keep it outside because we mostly used it for walks around the block. We didn't know at the time that mold spores come on the trees, so our pram ended up moldy, and once that happens with kid stuff, it's a no-go. Prams, I really admire parents that get a lot of use out of prams. Like, to me, as soon as your baby's walking, they hate the pram. The time for the pram is gone. But, you know, other parents do use them for a few years, but ultimately they aren't something that lasts as long as you think they do. And car seats. Car seats is probably the really big purchase, like $600, well, anywhere between $200 and $600. If you get a capsule first, that might last for 6 months, and you might spend $300 to $500 on a capsule. And then the car seats themselves, I know I recently bought Mother's Choice one. I think that was relatively cheap at $400 for my now 2-year-old, and that's a 0 to 4. He's a big kid. That's a bit of an extended one as well, so it may last him until he's 4, but that's 3 years. So it's not a huge amount of time. Now, HypnoBirthing classes with me, they're normally around about $5.97. Sometimes they're a little bit less with if we do online, which is still an option until the end of 2021 with COVID. So, and a little bit more if you choose to do a private class, which I can do in Brisbane for parents. So with these classes, I think my favourite thing about HypnoBirthing, I keep saying my favourite thing like there's one favourite thing, but was what it had taught me that I could take to other parts of parenting and life. So during my second pregnancy, I actually got appendicitis when my baby was 13 weeks in my belly, and it was pretty severe. In fact, quite proudly, I'll tell you, my surgeon said that I had the biggest appendix she'd ever seen that hadn't ruptured. So thank you. But when that happened, 13 weeks is well before most people will take up birth education between 15 to 20 weeks. So well before when I would have done birth education had I been uneducated in independent birth classes. But because of what I knew from HypnoBirthing, I was able to really ask a lot of questions. I talked to the head of obstetrics in the hospital that I was at about the consequences of taking the medication, to have a general anaesthetic, to have my appendix removed. We talked about, what we would do to check on baby, and medication that I would have that would be safest for baby, and all of this kind of stuff, so that when I consented to surgery, which really was the best option for me, considering what the surgeon said, I could do so with a real ease of mind. And a lot of what I learned in order to be able to do that, I learned from HypnoBirthing. And I just find it amazing that it transfers into other parts of my life. And I kind of love that it does that. So HypnoBirthing really, ideally do it for your first baby and then you'll have it for all your babies. But if it's your second baby or your last baby, it's not too late to do HypnoBirthing, because that amazing birth experience, it's your birthright. It does belong to you. So you should take birth education if now is the time to do it for you. So the course goes for 5 weeks. I say that over and over again. It's about 2.5 hours each week to totally prepare you for birth, as well as the relaxation and pain management techniques. We talk about hospital systems, and the reason why I teach people in Brisbane mostly is because I know the Brisbane hospital systems here. We teach hands-on help for birth partners, and we help you to feel empowered to make informed decisions, to know how to ask questions and all of that kind of stuff, so that you leave the course in a really positive, and I mean, nearly everybody leaves feeling excited about birth, which is my favourite. So these are my next courses. I'm just going to zoom through these because it depends on when you see them, whether they're relevant to you. So you can book online with me anytime. I'll drop a link for to go and have a look at the shop and do that. If you want some time, that's fine. There's a $50 discount for watching this video, and that will be the code HYPNO, HYPNO. And that's available for the next 2 days. So if you want some time to sort it out, you can have a think about it and then use that code anytime in the next few days. And you can do that if you're just going over the shop now. If you want to go ahead but you want to deposit and pay it off, or do a payment plan, both of those are great. Love budgeting. I am the queen of you doing that. So $50 deposit will secure your spot in the course, as well as get your course materials, including the book and a download card. And the full balance will be due 1 week prior. If it's a payment plan, we'll set up whatever works for you. Once again, you'll be entitled to $50 off for watching this whole thing today and using that code HYPNO, but I can send out an invoice to anybody that wants to do that. If you want more time and you want to talk to me in person, we can arrange a time for a chat on the phone or a Skype. Even a coffee. I'm a work-at-home mum, so if you want to get me out of the house for a coffee, I will happily meet you somewhere and have a coffee with you to talk about HypnoBirthing. It's my favourite thing to talk about is birth. I'm a birth nerd. So that is how to book with me. And then I just wanted to thank you if you've come watch this whole way, for joining me today. Birth really is the defining moment in your life. You don't get a do-over. If you have a second child or even a third child, every birth is different. So the fact that you've shown up and you wanted to watch and find out more about HypnoBirthing tells me that you have a birth, that you have an idea that birth actually is amazing, that it is beautiful, that it can be this incredible experience, and that it doesn't have to be disempowering and painful and traumatic. And, you know, that's huge. That's a really big step. So one of the things that I talked about with a friend who was another HypnoBirthing mum is that sometimes we get told we're lucky to have had such amazing births. And to be honest with you, that really bugs me. I'm not lucky to have had an amazing birth. I did a lot of work. I took independent birth classes. I did my research. I chose the care provider that was going to get me the type of birth that I wanted. I looked after my health in pregnancy and, you know, my physical health, so keeping active and that kind of stuff. It didn't happen by accident. It happened because I made it happen. And if I'd had special circumstances, and if I have special circumstances this time around, it's not luck, good luck, or bad luck. It's just what's happening with this baby. And I will still have an incredible birth that will work for this baby. It's not something that, you know, happens because the stars aligned for this one person and that it did it 2 times. It happened because I really did put in the effort for it. And if you can put in a little bit of effort, a little bit of time, a lot of practice and a big investment in yourself and your partner and your baby, then you will have an incredible birth as well, no matter what your birthing day brings. So that is me, and that is HypnoBirthing. I just once again thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a wonderful day.